Hello and welcome back to Moonlit Journal. It is April 30th today, so the very last day of the month, and I thought it would be nice to reflect on how the last month has been in my Hobonichi Cousin. This is a spring start, so it really has been 1 month that I've been in here. I wanted to talk through how this book has been going so far, any updates that I might have made to my journaling practice, and I also wanted to give a little flip through of all of my April pages. I've never really done that on my channel before. I thought it might be interesting. I personally love seeing other people's flip throughs. I find it fascinating to see what someone else likes to document about their life because we all place importance on different things, and it's so interesting to me. I also just love seeing other people's visual languages in their books and how it might differ from mine. So thought, why not share my own? So that's what we have planned for today. Thank you for being here, and let's get into it. So the first thing I wanted to mention is how much I have been loving my cover. I don't know, I just really love whenever I open this up each day, it feels like I'm coming home. And I think a big reason for that is because I decorated this journal cover. I think just adding these visuals on the front of my book really made it feel so much more familiar and comfortable to me. I think all of these visuals resonate with me for one reason or another, and I feel like they perfectly reflect my aesthetic as well. But it really did make this book instantly feel very familiar and feel like home. And opening up to it every day, I just feel so attached to this book now and to this cover. I've absolutely loved using this cover, having these pockets here to keep all of my printouts and, little stickers and washi tape cards. I don't know. There's something about it that I find really comforting. So that has been kind of the first update. I feel so at home in this book and in this space, I guess. I was initially worried that I would get tired of the designs on here, but I don't think I will. I think even if this doesn't end up being aligned to my aesthetic, later on in the year, I think I will still look at this cover very fondly. And that's all that matters to me. So that's first things first. I thought we could go into the daily pages to start with because I think this is the area where I will have the most reflections to share. So starting with my ink log, this is still going. I did have a little accident with my TWSBI Eco when I filled it up with Monteverde pumpkin cake. That ink was so incredibly wet. It was a mess. I had to switch out of it the very same day. It did not work well in here, but right now my TWSBI is inked up with Ume Murasaki, which is a Tatcha ink, and that is going really well. Here's my April cover page. For April, I decided to use this page as kind of like a wallpaper of all of the ephemera and stationery that I picked up through the month. So it's kind of a reflection of the month in stationery. Looking at it completed now at the end of the month, I find this very visually chaotic. This is not really my aesthetic, which is fine. I'm trying to get past keeping everything aligned to my aesthetic in this book. I'm trying to just take it less seriously and have fun with it and experiment, try new things that I haven't done before, and it's okay if the end result is not something I particularly like looking at because not everything has to be beautiful. Sometimes I just want a documentation of what happened. And I think this gives a good overview of the month for me. So, starting the month with my packaging for this book, I got a ton of happy mail this month. This one was from Elle from the Common Corner. These two pieces here were from Alison from Little Coco Studio. And then I got some new stickers that I absolutely love. These are from the Yumi Kitagishi and Nico Neko collab. And then these two were the Our Studio PET tape. And then I have something to signify my Ana Luisa collaboration from last week, which was really exciting for me because I love that brand. I got a new passport TN as well. I went to Sidecar Donuts, which is my favorite donut shop in LA. So even though it's not the prettiest page to look at, it still makes me very happy to think back on all of these memories. So that's the cover page. I think I will change how I use the cover pages moving forward. I think for May, I might try doing a mood board on this one instead. For right now, while I'm still undecided, I'm just going to leave it blank. Moving into my daily pages. So this is the most consistent I've ever been with my journaling practice. And it's all since moving into this book. And I don't know why, but there was just a mental shift that happened at the start of April for me, where I felt a lot of the restrictions that I would place on myself and in my journal kind of melting away. And I knew I wanted to approach this journal differently from how I had been journaling before. Not to say that I'm journaling in a completely different way now, but I think it's small tweaks, like the smallest of adjustments mentally that have allowed me to journal more freely, more regularly, and less restrictively. I think in my previous journals, I was always a little precious with what I considered to be worthy enough of documenting. I would only write about things that I found really interesting or information that I knew I wanted to reference later. Or, if it was more thoughts and feelings kind of journaling, I would only really write things down if I had some sort of resolution to come to, some sort of moral of the story that I could also include. I think I just placed a lot of pressure on myself previously. And now what has changed in this book is I think I've started to become a lot more open about what is worthy of being documented. And I know that sounds so silly. It's not something that I consciously was aware of previously, that I was restricting myself in that way. It's only since writing in here so regularly that I made this connection and this realization. Yeah, I think what's different about how I'm using this book is there is truly nothing too small, too insignificant, too meaningless for me to add it in here. If it's on my mind, it's going in here. I think this book is much more of a celebration of the mundane than my previous books have been. And that has made all the difference. That has allowed me to crave coming in here every single day to translate my mind to paper. So truly, I'm using this daily journaling space as a documentation of my mind. And as a result, the entries that are in here are very varied, I guess. It contains my thoughts and feelings. Some pages have memory keeping and just are pure documentations of what happened that day. Some pages are literal transcriptions of quotes from books that I love. Some pages have 3 completely different topics that I'm talking about. There really are no rules anymore in these pages, and it's been a lot of fun. And now I can kind of flip through this and show you more tangible examples of what I'm talking about. But yeah, I just wanted to start with that because I think, especially with how popular journaling channels have become on YouTube and on Instagram, I think it's easier and easier now to start putting restrictions on what we write about, almost at a subconscious level, because you're comparing your journal to the hundreds of other journals that you now have access to online. And the more examples you have access to, the more that influences your own practice. And it's not intentional, right? It's all involuntary. But I think it's so important to be mindful of that and to remind yourself every single day that all that matters is what you deem important to document about your life. This practice is for you and you alone. Okay, so starting with this spread, you can kind of see here I'm starting to go out of my comfort zone a little bit with how I decorate my spreads in this book. I really wanted to start experimenting with different styles, with different decorative elements that I don't typically use in my journals, because again, that was me trying to get past this more restrictive, perfectionistic nature that I have when it comes to journaling. Really, from day one, I started incorporating new styles in this book just to see what resonates with me, what I like and what I don't like. So, for example, I never used to use stamps in my journals. That's something new that I've tried here, and I really like how it looks. Washi tape as well is not something I typically use, but I've been using it a lot more in this book, and it's been fun to play around with. So on this first spread, I'm just talking about work anxiety. It's something I struggle with quite a bit, actually. Ever since kind of getting my autism diagnosis, I have started noticing more and more that I mask quite a bit at work, and work often feels like an 8-hour-long performance for me. I have to be on when I'm at work, and the nature of my role requires a lot of presentations to large groups of people. I have to collaborate with many different teams. It requires a lot of tactful communication, and that is something that does not come naturally to me. So it requires a lot of mental energy, and it's really quite draining. At the same time, I struggle with that because I'm really grateful for my job as well. And so I feel quite conflicted about work, and that's really what I'm writing about here. On this page, I'm talking about tattoos. And again, ever since starting this self-discovery journey, I have wanted to get more tattoos. I already have quite a few tattoos, but I think tattoos, for me personally, are a great way of expressing myself. And lately, I have never felt more in tune with who I am than I have right now. And that just makes me want to embrace all of my interests and my joys and what makes me me so much more than ever before. And so I would just really love to get more tattoos in the near future. So I'm reflecting on that. And then April 2nd was also World Autism Day, so I had to reflect about that as well. But I really like how the deco turned out on these pages. Okay, this spread is a little frustrating for me to look at because I just hate how the ink turned out here. I discussed this in my previous video, so I'm not going to get too much into it, but I've been experiencing quite a few ink struggles with this paper. So yeah, this is just painful for me to look at, but I'm just talking about chronic pain here. I had a particularly bad night of no sleep because of my migraines, and I'm just writing about how it feels quite terrifying sometimes when you're experiencing excruciating pain and have tried every trick that you have in your toolkit to get rid of it and nothing works, and just how scary that is because it feels quite hopeless and like you're not in control of your body. So I decided to rest this day. I believe I took the day off work, which I don't do often, but I'm proud of myself for doing that. Over here, you can see I started introducing this element in my pages. So I now use this frame stamp whenever I am writing on a day that is different from the printed date here. So because I wrote this entry on April 3rd rather than April 4th, I indicated that in the frame. It doesn't happen very often, but this is a kurukinki stamp, and I really love it. I think it looks really nice. But over here, I'm just writing about rewatching Sherlock. It is definitely one of my comfort shows, but I'm just writing about how instantaneous the feeling of familiarity, comfort, belonging, and safety that this show brings me whenever I play it. It just transports me back to the very first time I watched it. And that was in freshman year of college for me. So I was 17. So yeah, this show has meant a lot to me. Okay, here is one that I'm gonna have to censor. Over here, I'm talking about my new pocket notebook. I'm so excited. I ended up getting myself a Passport Traveler's notebook to use as my everyday carry. So just reflecting on that a little bit, feeling excited. I will be covering this notebook in a future video. I just want to spend more time with it and really integrate it into my daily life before I speak about it. But very exciting addition. Okay, this spread looks a lot like how my previous journal spreads have historically looked. I typically stick to, pictures that I find on Pinterest, and I do layering like this sometimes, but I kind of like to offset the pictures to compose the page in a way that feels more legible to me. And I like to stick with a darker aesthetic usually. So this is very familiar, comfortable, and how a lot of my previous journals look. Let's see. I'm talking about burnout here and how I've been feeling quite burnt out for a while now. And then my partner and I went to one of our favorite trails close to home, and it's actually the one that I went to in my solo journaling date video. We had gone there just to get some fresh air, and for some reason it just reminded me of one of my favorite books. And so I was reflecting on that, just seeing the vastness of the ocean and the nature around me reminded me, I don't know, it was just a reminder to me of how insignificant the entire history of humankind is compared to the age of this planet and this solar system and this universe. It just hit me how the entire history of our species is just but a millisecond compared to the entire history of the earth. And yet here we are worrying so much about our day-to-day struggles and, each of our individual lives. And of course, I'm not trying to invalidate that. The struggles we face are very real, but I don't know, it's always, for me, a comforting reminder just how infinitely small and kind of inconsequential our lives are. Anyway, not to get too deep, over here I'm talking about caring for myself and kind of learning how to set boundaries a bit more. I really love this image. It says, "Empathy without boundaries is self-destruction," and I completely agree with this. It's something that I'm trying to be more mindful about and live by a little bit more. I love this spread so much. I got all of these images from Pinterest, and unfortunately I don't know the artist. And that's one of the big downsides of sourcing images from Pinterest, because I would love to be able to credit the artists for these images. Yeah, I just think this looks beautiful. And I love that I'm embracing color a lot more in this book because it makes me happy to look at. On this spread, I just have a few quotes from that same book that I mentioned that the nature spot I went to reminded me of. It's called Death's End by Cixin Liu. I hope I pronounced that correctly. It's Cixin Liu, Liu. He is the author of the Three Body Problem series, and this is book 3 in that series. And that is my favorite series of all time. And this is before the Netflix adaptation came out. I'm not the biggest fan of the Netflix adaptation. I think it was fine, but it's very different from the books. So I highly, highly recommend, if you haven't read this series yet, definitely check it out. It is incredible. I've never read anything like it. And I think the last book of the series might be my favorite. It's really hard to choose, but Death's End was incredible. I still think about this book very regularly. It really left a mark on me. So highly recommend. I'm just writing some quotes from the book that really stuck with me. And on this page, I'm talking about anxiety and unmasking. I started Love on the Spectrum here, season 3, and I'm just reflecting on how everyone on the show is so fully themselves, and I find that incredibly inspiring and admirable. I'm just kind of reflecting on how I've masked my entire life, and it was subconscious. I feel conflicted about that because it has allotted me many privileges in my life as a result, but it came at a huge cost as well. And, I wonder who I would be if I hadn't masked so much. I wonder what my interests would be, what my mannerisms would be like. Yeah, unmasking is definitely something I write about very frequently in here because my autism diagnosis is so new and fresh, and it's something I'm actively trying to work on right now. So it's very top of mind for me, and it comes up pretty much every day for me. So there's a lot of that in here. I love this spread. I think it looks very visually pleasing to me. So over here, this is a good example of I had 3 different topics that I wrote about on one page. In the top portion here, I'm talking about how polarities are necessary in life and to me are the point of human existence, having to experience polarities in life, whether that's happiness and sadness, comfort and discomfort, pain and pleasure. We are meant to experience the full spectrum in life. And so I should keep that in mind when I'm feeling particularly down or anxious or I'm going through a rough time. I want to start reminding myself that that's the point. I wouldn't want an existence where that doesn't exist at all. And then on the very same page, I'm talking about meeting Alison from Little Coco Studio. And so that's just an example of what I meant by not having any restrictions on what I choose to write about in here. It's truly anything that is on my mind, I'm putting in here, which has been really nice. And I think a big part of the reason why I've become so attached to this book, because it feels like an extension of myself now. Going back to the spread though, meeting Alison was so amazing. I just felt like we already knew each other, it felt so familiar, and that's very rare for me to feel that. So I'm very, very thankful to have formed a friendship with her, and yeah, she's just such an amazing person. And then I also talked about the Common Corner, who has also become a good friend to me, Elle from the Common Corner. And I was watching one of her videos, and she talked about how she's been watching my videos for the past few months, and I was just kind of gushing about that here. It's still very surreal to me whenever I hear other channels reference Moonlit Journal. Yeah, it's very surreal. It's very hard for me to believe sometimes, but it means a lot to me, and I'm so grateful. And then on this page, I talked about my autism diagnosis video that I shared earlier in April. I was really, really anxious about posting that video, and I experienced quite a lot of anxiety the days leading up to it, and I was writing about that. This was the day that I posted it, and all day my hands were shaking, my heart was beating really fast. I was genuinely very, very anxious that day. But as the comments started coming in, I was overwhelmed with how beautiful, honest, brave, thoughtful, kind, compassionate all of the comments were on that video. And it made me quite emotional to see. Many of you mentioned going through similar experiences, feeling similar emotions, and being able to relate to what I was saying. And I'm just so grateful for you if you chose to share that, because it meant the world to me. It made me feel so heard, so understood. Yeah, over here I'm just talking about how, I've never felt so understood than I have since starting this channel. And then I write, it's quite ironic as I'm anonymous and everyone watching is essentially a stranger, yet the connection and love I feel from everyone is so real. I've never had it before. How lucky am I? And how fortunate are we to have each other? I know that's a little sappy, but yeah, that's honestly how I was feeling this day and how I still feel. So thank you very much for anyone who watched that video. This is my spread from my solo journaling date video, so it probably looks familiar if you've seen that. But on this page, I was just talking about how to best care for myself and foster joy in my life. And then over here, more work reflections. A lot of my entries are about work and, feeling stuck at work or experiencing work anxiety, because it really helps me to just get it out on the page. It's one of those things where there's not necessarily a solution or a resolution that I can come to when I'm writing about it, but even just the act of articulating how I feel, even if there is no solution at the end of it, it still helps me tremendously because it helps me to process the feeling. It's almost like I feel this sense of relief afterwards because I'm like, okay, I know how I feel now. Even if it's not positive, like at least I know and I can move forward with that. And so that is always helpful for me to write about negative emotions, even if it doesn't accomplish anything or lead to a solution. It's still helpful because it helps with acceptance for me. Oh gosh, I feel like I'm spending too long on each page, so I'm gonna try to speed it up a little bit. Okay, over here, I'm giving little reviews on recent media that I consumed. So I watched White Lotus season 3. Thought it was great. Not as good as the first season, but it was still really entertaining. And then Sleep Token, one of my favorite artists ever. I'm absolutely obsessed with Sleep Token, and they have been coming out with new music again, so I'm so excited. I've been loving all of their new singles as well. And then more reflections on work, love on the spectrum, and then I got new stickers from the Nico Neko and Yumi Kirikishi collab. So just geeking out about that. Over here on the 17th, I went into work that day, so I'm just writing about that here. And then over here, it's interesting. Like, this is a good example of like just purely reflecting on the day and then writing about something like completely deep that's been consuming my mind within the same like spread. So here I'm talking about patterns and recursion that happen in the universe. This is something that has always interested me, how similar patterns repeat at different scales throughout the universe, from the structure of atoms all the way to the structure of galaxies. They're quite similar, just at different scales. And I think that is so interesting. I'm often in awe of how little I truly know. And I like reflecting on that. Over here, once again, talking about masking. I liked that I had this sticker of a mask to add here. Thought that was cute. And then here, I was feeling quite tired this day because I had a social gathering that I had to go to on the 19th. So while I enjoyed meeting old friends and socializing this day, it does always catch up to me and it does make me feel quite drained the following day. So I was just struggling with my energy on the 20th. And we did end up going back to the lighthouse, which is the trail that I mentioned earlier. And I journaled there for a bit this day. So I have been doing more outdoor journaling more regularly. I think mine and Alison's collaboration video really inspired me to practice that more often, to take my journals out with me more often. And it was really nice. Over here, I'm just talking about my decision to stop tracking my health in my Hobonichi weeks and to just consolidate it in this book. And I wrote a little bit about how I've been feeling at capacity lately, like pretty burnt out and low energy. And it's interesting that although I've been feeling that way, I don't have any difficulty journaling in here daily, because usually when I'm burnt out, the first thing that is impacted is my journaling practice. I usually end up, getting into a journaling slump and taking days away from my journal. But I don't know, ever since starting this one, I've just wanted to be in here no matter how tired I am or how depleted I feel. I still have been coming in here every day and journaling. I guess I've just really formed a habit now of journaling, and I'm so happy that it's become more consistent for me. And then I received some happy mail from Alison, so I had to stick it in here and dedicate a page to it because look at how beautiful this letter is. This was the envelope, and then I have the letter she wrote me tucked in here as well. But it's so gorgeous. I had to save it. This is another page I'm gonna have to censor. I watched Adolescence on Netflix. It was incredible. 5 out of 5 stars. Very, very well made. I highly recommend watching this if you haven't yet. Okay, on this spread, this is where I started writing with Tatsuya Umemurasaki. I love how this ink looks in here, and I'm so thankful that it doesn't bleed through. There is some feathering on some pages, but luckily the bleed through is very minimal, and for the most part, it's just ghosting. So I'm glad I've been able to use that in here because I love this color so much. It's like a mauvey, browny pink. It's definitely a mauve tone, but I also see some purple in there. I feel like I see purple in everything though. Like when I was watching back my ink swatching in my last video, I kept saying I see purple in like every ink, and I don't know, sometimes I feel like I don't have an accurate perception of color. Yeah, I would not trust me when it comes to describing colors because I don't know how accurate it is. But anyway, I love this color. I think it looks gorgeous. And I really like how it looks with this spread as well. So over here, I dreamt about my grandmother this day. And so I was just writing about my dream and how much I miss her. And then here, I wrote about a subreddit that I absolutely love. It's called Autism in Women. On this page, I had some spillover from the 25th that I brought into this page that I kind of blocked off. But again, just writing about Sleep Token because they released another single. And yeah, I talked about how recently I've been using noise canceling headphones. I recently got noise canceling headphones, and it has been a game changer for me in terms of the sensory joy that I'm able to experience now, because I've been really spending more intentional time with music lately and using that as a way to regulate myself and feel that sensory joy, and it's been wonderful. And then over here, I was just talking about the day, just reflecting on what I did that day. Okay, we're getting close to the end. This was a very special day for me. This is when I met Helena from Tiny Tiger Co. in person, which is so amazing that we were able to meet because she lives in Australia. So I never would have expected that I'd ever have the chance to meet her. But luckily, she was in LA for a few days, so we were able to make it happen and meet up in person, which is so cool. I'm so thankful that she made the time to meet me. And if you haven't seen Helena's YouTube channel, Tiny Tiger Co., I'm gonna link it in my description. You should definitely check it out. Her content is so unique and special in this journaling space, in my opinion. She puts so much thought and care into the content she creates, and she is very thoughtful about her approach to consumerism, which I really appreciate. There's a lot of intention behind her journaling practice, and she's just so well spoken. She articulates herself so well that it's just a joy to watch her videos, honestly. So please go check out Tiny Tiger Co. if you haven't already. But yeah, it was really nice meeting Helena, and so I just talked about that here. And on this page, gave a little review on Honora. I thought it was great. It was really entertaining, but I didn't think it was necessarily Oscar worthy. Not that the Oscars mean anything at all anymore, honestly, so I guess it's all arbitrary, but I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. And then I went to Sidecar Donuts this day, had to save that. And then I just talked about dreading work, which, yeah, seems to be a pattern. It's not that I dislike my job. I do like my job. I just struggle with the mental fatigue that comes with it. And then here is the last spread of the month. I recently bought a Baggu tote bag that I could use for work, and it arrived this day on the 28th, and I wrote about it. I was pretty disappointed in the quality of this bag, so I'm gonna be returning it. But yeah, I've just been looking for a nice tote bag that I could use for work. Still on the hunt for the right one. I really love the one by Polène. Polène is one of my favorite brands when it comes to handbags in general. And then I'm just talking about my upcoming travel plans. I'll be traveling next week for a work trip, and I'm pretty nervous about it just because I know how taxing it's gonna be on me. So I'm trying to mentally prepare and figure out ways that I can avoid overexerting myself. But yeah, I think it's just going to be a strenuous week for me, and that's fine. I will mentally prepare for it. And then over here, I'm just talking about work and YouTube and just finding ways to bring more joy into both of those realms of my life. And that is all. Those are all of my April daily pages. I've been having the best time in here. I've really just been using it as needed, no rules, no restrictions. And yeah, like I said, this really just feels like an extension of myself now. It just so happens that I've used up every single page of April, but I don't have a rule for myself that I have to write in here every single day. I will just indicate on the page what day I'm writing, and that's fine with me. It's great to see that I actually wrote in all of the days of April so far. So I'm really happy about that. I feel like the small mindset shifts that I've made in how I approach this book has allowed me to journal more consistently and find more value from my journaling practice as well. It really helps me solidify my sense of self when I'm journaling regularly, because it's helping me articulate how I'm feeling every single day, the things that interest me, the things that consume my mind. You know, it gives me a better idea of my perception of the world and of my life. So I'm really, really happy with this book. And I just love the Hobonichi Cousin. I think this format just feels good to my brain. Like, it just clicks for me. So yeah, I'm pretty much going to continue journaling in this same manner moving forward, and I'm feeling really good about it. Other parts of the book that I wanted to show you. This is how my sticker wall is looking at this point, at the end of April. I was going to use this space to collect stickers from, throughout the year, larger stickers that maybe might not fit in my daily spreads. And it's already pretty much full. So I might have to use this back page for, to continue for the rest of the year. But this has been fun. Some new additions. I got this beautiful sticker here from Elle from the Common Corner. We recently exchanged Happy Mail, and gosh, her letter just completely made my whole week. It was so heartwarming for me. So thank you, Elle, if you're watching. I have already added this guy in here so I can look at him every single day. And then I also added a Yumi Kirigishi sticker here from the Nico Neko collab. I think all of the other ones you must have seen already. Over here, I'm still using this page for tracking my days off. And then this is still going strong as my health tracker now. And then as for the April monthly, this is what it looks like. I love how playful I was with the deco on this spread. I usually don't include this many stickers in my monthly spreads. They're typically much more minimal than this and much more subdued color palette wise. But in April, I don't know, I just really wanted a lot of color and I was feeling more expressive. So yeah, this makes me happy to look at. And then my weekly sections are quite private because this is where I put in all of my work to-dos and my work notes on the weekend section. But I went ahead and covered up the sensitive information on this spread, so just so that I can show you how I use my weeklies. And this is still how I've been using it throughout April. I have my weekly to-dos on the left-hand panel here, and then on each of the days, I just start with my work to-dos every day. That goes on for however many to-dos I have that day. And then at the end of the day, I just add another line, and whatever space is left, I will do a quick reflection on that day. So more of like a memory keeping portion. So I find that the weekly spreads really give a good idea of what I was up to that week. So it's really helpful to look back on. And what I've really been enjoying is just adding in ephemera that I pick up throughout the week. And I've been doing this every week. So yeah, this has been working really well. I'm still using it the same way moving forward because this is just what works for my brain. And then we have the dailies. So that is everything I wanted to share with you today. I hope that was interesting. I don't typically share flip-throughs on my channel. One, because usually what I write about is quite personal, or it feels personal to me. But two, it's also just, I wonder if it's entertaining or interesting for other people to see. I tend to think it would be boring to share the things that I write about because they matter so much to me, but I don't know if they necessarily matter to anyone else. But maybe you're like me and you are just curious to see what other people deem interesting. Please let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your feedback about this video. Do you enjoy watching flip-throughs? Did you enjoy watching my flip-through? And you can be honest. I would love to know, because if it is something that you enjoyed, I would consider doing flip-throughs more often and maybe on a monthly basis. So please let me know. And thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you giving me company today. I hope you've had a wonderful April, and I'm wishing you the very best for May. Okay, I will see you in the next one.